I will jump in, and as people join us, know that you are welcome here. So welcome to episode 107. My name is Rachel. I can be found pretty much everywhere as well for pearls. Thank you to those who took the time out of their day to join us for the live stream on Patreon. You guys are the reason that this show continues to exist month after month, and I want to take a moment to say thank you so much for your ongoing support. There are lots of things going on over at patreon.com for people to participate in. Even just $1 a month makes a huge difference and gives you access to the monthly teaching content as well as the Wool and Spinning Radio, which is an audio podcast hosted by myself and my friend Katrina, who is Crafty Jacks and runs Crafty Jacks Boutique, which is a fiber and yarn dyeing company based here just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. I hope that you guys are all well. Welcome to new viewers. Welcome to returning viewers. I want to thank you for, again, taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us. We have a full show today. I don't have very much housekeeping, thank goodness. So I just wanted to mention a couple of changes to the Wool and Spinning blog, which is wellforpearls.com. And then we were going to jump right into a spinning growth segment, which features Casey, who is also Sassenach Knits 219 on Ravelry. And then I have a bunch of projects to talk about. I've got some feedback to ask for from you guys and just some general things that I haven't really been able to talk about on the show yet because they've been done for a while, but we've had other things to talk about on the show, and we always get busy talking about other things, and then next thing I know, it's been an hour and the live stream is over. So bear with me. We've got lots to talk about today, and hopefully we can get through everything. And if not, we'll just carry it over into December's show. Not a big deal at all. So for really quickly for housekeeping, one of my dreams, goals, aspirations, whatever you want to call it, was to start a wool and spinning newsletter. The reason is because I know a lot of us have our inboxes flooded with daily, weekly, monthly reminders of various things that are going on, and we've signed up for them over time because we think that it's going to bring value and we're going to read all this stuff, and the reality is we don't. But the reason why I wanted to start a newsletter was because I don't really have a way of updating everybody on things that are up and coming all in one place. I end up doing blog posts on the blog, or I do a post on Patreon. Often they get posted in both places. It's a lot of separate posts for a lot of different things, and I wanted to be able to update people about things that are up and coming all in one place. So with that in mind, I've been hoping to start a newsletter for a really long time, and it is officially started. It will come out on the 14th of the month every month. It's only going to go out once a month, and it's just going to have updates on things that are up and coming. So for the new year, some of the things that we're going to be talking about are going to be the 51 yarn spin along that's going to be starting in January. We're also going to have the, trying to think of all the different things. There's going to be some changes to the How I Spin content, so that will be in there. Anybody who is currently subscribed to the co-executive producer level on Patreon, that tier is going to change ever so slightly. The tier itself isn't going to change, but what you receive in that tier is going to change. There's going to be an add-on, so you will receive the monthly vlog that goes along with the How I Spin content that people who are at a higher tier receive. So there's a whole bunch of things that are coming in and a whole bunch of things that are changing. And I just wanted to be able to update you guys all in one spot. So go to the blog, wellforpearls.com. At the very top, there's a bar. It just says join the newsletter, plug in your email address, hit submit. That's it. You can unsubscribe at any time. There is a subscription confirmation that you need to do once you check your email the next time you have a chance to, and then you'll be on the list. It's monthly. It's just an opportunity for me to update everybody all in one spot. That's it. So it'll be quite simple and easier for me to update everybody. All right. Oh, hi Eve. No, it's just starting. You're okay. I was catching up on Cornwall Crafter on YouTube, which is our friend Eve here in the Slack community, and she's currently in the live stream. I was catching up on her podcast. I've been catching up on A Priest Crafts. Is that right, Rebecca, the name that I'm saying for your video podcast on YouTube? I've been trying to catch up with Felicia on Taking Back Friday on the Sweet Georgia Yarns vlog that's weekly. I've been trying to catch up on everything, and I can never keep up with stuff, but I've been really trying to catch up on specific podcasts recently. So if you're looking for some good podcasts, I would highly recommend those video podcasts. They're all available on YouTube. You can just search for them, and hopefully you'll enjoy them. I really enjoy them. I just have been woefully behind the last few months, but I've been able to start getting caught up over the last couple of weeks. So I'm really enjoying it. So thank you guys. Oh, Rebecca, Priest Crafts. That's right. Just catching up in the chat channel. You guys are always so chatty, and then I look over at the chat channel and it's like whoo, all this stuff, and I have to take 2 seconds to just read through and make sure that I'm not missing anything major. Hi Megan, hi Alex, hi Karma. It's so good to see everybody. Breed and color studies have been released. The response was unbelievable. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for the support for Katrina. It's been pretty amazing, pretty overwhelming. Thank you so much. There will be some more information coming about breed and color studies over the next couple of weeks. Those of you who are waiting for fiber, hold on. Canada Post is doing rotating strikes right now, so we're just kind of waiting for that all to end, but Katrina is going to continue to ship stuff and throw stuff in the mail. And I have started spinning, but I'm not going to start showing it on the podcast until people start receiving their fiber, because I always find it sort of hard when you're watching people spinning and you don't have your fiber yet and you're kind of waiting and you want to get started, but this person's spinning along and they're way ahead. So I'm just going to hold off on sharing what I've been working on for probably until the new year, probably until January. I might give you a bit of a teaser next show, because some people have received their fiber by then. So breed and color studies are well on their way. We're going to change things around a little bit for when we start our next breed and color study in the spring in April, and we will keep you guys posted on those updates at that time. For those who subscribe to Patreon or on Patreon, Wool and Spinning Radio, there will be some information about that in the December episode. So have a listen to, I think it's episode 30 when it airs in December. You guys will hear some of the things that Katrina and I have coming down the pipeline to just change things around a little bit and hopefully be able to make it a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more efficient, a little bit easier, and continue to give us feedback. We appreciate it. It's how we get better. Lastly, oh yes, rotating strikes from Canada Post. I have thrown a bunch of stuff in the mail for people. 2 parcels were going to the US and 1 parcel was going to the UK. I'm just hoping you'll get it in good time. Sharon, you emailed me yesterday, I think, with your address for the calendar giveaway back in October. Again, I'm just hoping that things get to you in good time. If you guys haven't received things in the next week or so, just hold on. Nobody really knows how long parcels are taking, and of course it's the holiday season, so bear with us. I've stopped trying to keep up with what Canada Post are doing. It's just a little bit too much, so just bear with me and bear with Katrina, but stuff is being mailed out and being shipped. All right, let's do a quick spinning growth. I'm going to switch the cameras around. Talk about this gorgeous top. So this is so spinning growth, just for those who are first new to the show and are new to what we do here at Wool and Spinning. Basically, spinning growth is an opportunity for us to look at each other's spinning and for us to look at each other's yarns and projects that we make. Maybe we knit with our yarns, maybe we wove with our yarns. It's an opportunity for us to be able to reflect on our spins, get better, find areas of improvement, find areas that maybe we were hyper self-critical. Maybe we shouldn't be as critical as we sometimes are. And other times, maybe it's an opportunity for us to improve our skill and improve something about our spinning that helps us to grow. So this isn't an opportunity to diss on one another or to criticize in any way, shape, or form. It's more of an opportunity to reflect and to learn from the things that we make choices about when we're in our process, because we all make choices all the time, and sometimes we just do things because that's how we've always done them. And I've found that I'm really falling into that lately, and I've found this segment to be really helpful to stop myself to say, just because I've always done it this way, does that mean it's really the best way to do things? And my friend Kim, who blogs over at Clada Fiber Arts, she is probably one of my, she's a spinning mentor of mine for sure. And she works with me with my spinning every so often. And recently we sat down a few times, and she really helps me to remember why I do things and questions why sometimes the way I've always done it isn't the best way to do things, or is the best way to do things in certain situations, but not all the time. So just good reminders for us. This is a beautiful spin that Casey did. So this is Sassenach Knits 219, and I love her Ravatar on Ravelry because it's of, oh shoot, what's his name? You guys know. I've watched all the shows. I've read all the books. Diana Gabaldon. What's his name? The Scot that she falls in love with. Chad will tell me. They and her on her Ravatar, she's got the saying, "Some like it Scot." I just think it's awesome. I am Scottish, so I get a big kick out of it. Jamie Fraser, thank you so much. Her photo is of Jamie Fraser. So I love it. There's like 4 people now that have popped in there and said, Jamie. Of course it's Jamie. So this is, I'm going to read you what Casey wrote, and then we can go through it. I also have a blog post that I found that was very helpful that I'm going to read as well, and then we'll sort of do a reflection on all of it. So just bear with me for just a sec. This is what Casey says. This is my recent spin, and while it looks lovely, the process of spinning this yarn didn't go quite as I had hoped. Isn't that always the way? Firstly, because the fiber is a blend of very fine merino and bamboo, it was a challenge to spin as the fiber became staticky and wanted to fly away frequently, so it made the spinning not so enjoyable. Secondly, I added a bit too much plying twist, even after washing and setting the twist, it came out feeling a bit ropey. Overall, it turned out okay, but I need to work on my plying twist so that I'm not over-plying and so that I can obtain a softer drapier yarn. So the blog post that I was referring to about bamboo is written by All Fiber Arts, and it's allfiberarts.com, and she posted this back in February of 2017. So it's a relatively recent blog post, since some blogs have been written for so long now that you're looking at posts that are like 10 or 15 years old, which is so cool. But what she says is bamboo fiber for spinning is now available in 2 forms. One is a smoothly combed viscose top, and the other is a rougher staple fiber. So for bamboo viscose top, which is what would have been in this, the bamboo viscose top is produced from bamboo pulp, like other viscous pulp fibers. The bamboo is crushed and made into a pulp, and the natural enzymes, hydrogen peroxide, and chemicals are added to further soften the fibrous pulp. The resulting pulp is wet spun and forced through a spinneret to produce fine bamboo filaments in the same way as other pulp-based fibers. The bamboo fiber is white and silky in appearance and is cool as a result of its high absorbency due to the fiber being full of cavities. This bamboo top is very smooth and silky, rather similar in handle to, okay, so just let me skip forward a little bit to what she talks about in terms of her actual spinning, because she did a sample on this particular blog post. I spun this yarn with high twist, with this using the smallest whirl on my Kromsky Sonata spinning wheel, 14:1. This top is quite slippery, so I loosened the tension on the brake band in order to slow down the take-up speed as much as possible so that I could spin finely without having the roving fly away on me. I also turned the bobbin around so that the brake was around the smaller whirl on the bobbin. So this is a shacked bobbin. This is not a Kromsky bobbin, but you'll notice that there is a smaller whirl back here and there's a larger whirl up here. So this is generally the side that you would use for Scotch tension, and this is the side that you would use for double drive. So what she did, because the Kromsky Sonata can do double drive and it can do Scotch tension, so the bobbins are very similar on Kromsky wheels as they are on shacked wheels, where you have a smaller whirl at one end and a larger whirl at the other end of the bobbin. And the idea is that you have more surface area covering the brake band on one side versus the other. So what she did was she put Scotch tension on the smaller whirl side to try to slow the bobbin down even more. so that the break was around the smaller whorl of the bobbin. I used a worsted drafting method, taking care not to let twist enter the drafting zone and go into the unspun roving. I plied this as a 2-ply, changing the wheel ratio to 9:1 in order to create a soft yarn. So she very much had, when she was spinning her sample, which was pure bamboo, she decreased her ratio when she was plying so that she would get a softer spun plied yarn instead of a over twisted high twist yarn. So the reason why I wanted to share that with you and sort of look at the two yarns side by side is because Casey talks about over-plying, preventing herself from over-plying so that she would obtain a softer drapier yarn. That would definitely be the case here. I think the only thing that I would do differently with this fiber, actually no, there's two things. The only thing, in terms of the actual spinning, I probably wouldn't have changed very much spinning the singles because this was a learning experience for her, and she tried to maximize her. She was spinning at a higher twist, but she was, what am I trying, there's a word that I'm trying to find and I just can't think of it. Because the fiber was so flyaway and so slippery, I suspect that the twist was sort of helping her to keep up with that flyawayness, and that higher twist helps you to manage that flyaway fiber. So one thing that she could have done is taken some olive oil and just rubbed it onto her hands really, really lightly, and used that on her hands as she was spinning the singles to just smooth the fiber down and to minimize all of that static and all of that flyaway nature of the fiber. It just helps you to manage the twist. You can use neat's foot oil as well, but it does come from the marrow of beef bones, of cattle bones, and so it's not my personal preference to use some of those products if there are other products that you could use instead. So I know my friend Kim uses olive oil. She's kind of got me using olive oil as well, and I really like it. It's fine. You just dump a little bit of olive oil into a little ramekin, dip your fingers into it, rub it all over your hands, and then go. And then the other thing with really flyaway fibers, and when they're really, really staticky like this, is you like what was read in the blog post, you just decrease the uptake a little bit so that things aren't flying out of your hands. And so decrease your uptake, that means take off the break. So don't have such a tight break band on, and go with a slightly higher ratio so that the twist that is going into your fiber is actually catching those fibers and keeping them twisted. Now, in terms of plying, you could have done one of two things. I think this yarn is actually really lovely, and I think it's actually really pretty. And I think when you go to knit a toque or go to knit some fingerless mitts, I think you're actually going to be really happy with it. And I think you're going to be actually quite happy with the fact that it's more tightly twisted, because that fine merino can handle that twist. And there are no scales. There's no, on the bamboo, there's no scales. There is a staple length, but it's because it's been cut. It's not because there really is a staple length with these viscose fibers. So when you go to knit with it, you need a certain amount of twist for wear and tear. Like merino needs a certain amount of twist, otherwise it's going to pill really super badly. So depending on what you're going to do with it, you might actually be really glad that you over twisted it and over applied it. You know, if you're going to use it as part of a toque, I don't think you have a ton of yardage based on what I saw on your project page. I think it was like 100 and something yards, 140 or 190 yards or something. So if you use it in a toque, or if you use it in fingerless mitts or something, I think you're actually going to be really happy with this yarn. So the only thing that you maybe could have done if you wanted it to be slightly lower twist is just to decrease the ratio when you went to ply, or maybe don't treadle as fast so you're not adding quite so much ply twist. The twist angle looks pretty high. It looks like it's sort of like a twist angle of like 55 or 60%, maybe even 65, maybe. It's hard to tell from the photos. So maybe plying to more like 45 degrees would have been enough. But that, honestly, I think this yarn is quite lovely, and I think you'll be surprised when you go to work with it, because you need that twist to hold it all together. There's nothing else to keep it all really nicely, not together, but these yarns can handle a certain amount of twist. So depending on what you're going to use it for, you might be really glad that you have more twist in it. I'm pretty sure, Kelly, that the Kromsky Sonata can do both Scotch tension and double drive, because I remember looking at it when I bought my Kromsky Minstrel. So Kelly says she has a Sonata, and she had no idea she could do double drive with it. Can you double check? Can somebody double check? Because I'm saying that it can, but maybe it can't. Maybe it was only the Minstrel. Because I know a lot of the Kromsky wheels can go back and forth, and I remember looking at the Sonata and deciding to go with the Minstrel instead when I was first learning how to spin. So, oh, there you go. Eve says all the Kromskys can do both. So there you go. The Sonata can do both. Let me just have a look. I'm trying not to say It's very difficult. Eve, leave-in conditioner works well. Yes, leave-in conditioner works really well. And remember, if you use olive oil or somebody said lanolin, would pure lanolin work as well? I suspect that it would. I mean, you're only using such a tiny amount. All of this stuff will wash out in the washing process. So don't worry about having your fiber coated with a whole bunch of fibers. You do need to make sure you're not coating your hands with tons and tons. I think I've talked about this before because I used some leftover neat's foot oil from a friend on something else. And you don't need a lot. Like, you just want to put a little bit on your fingertips and then rub it over your hands. That's really all you need to do. When you're doing roll legs, you can always put it on your hands and then pat the roll legs down, and that works really well too to keep those fibers from flying away. Lavender scented water, that's perfect, Karma. Fine mist spray. Ethical issues for lanolin, that's right. So it depends on whether you see, some of this stuff is really hard. Alex has a really good point. So lanolin has its ethical issues because most lanolin on the market was taken in under rather violent-ish conditions from the sheep. And of course it can also be an allergen. That's right. Most people, when they say they have a wool allergy, it's actually to lanolin that they have an allergy, if they really do have an allergy or not. The interesting thing about some of these products, like neat's foot oil is one of them, lanolin is another. We work with wool, and we are all more than aware of where wool comes from and all of this stuff around the fibers that we work with. But I think going in as an aware consumer and knowing where your stuff comes from and under what conditions it was harvested under is really important. And being informed is a great way to make conscious decisions when you're going to consume and when you're going to purchase. And more, that's one of the things that I have found more and more distressing about what we do in terms of like our crafting and our making. And the nice thing is there's more and more people that are having these conversations and are willing to have these conversations. So ask questions, you know, look at what other people are doing and ask them where they're sourcing stuff from, what the conditions that they're getting it from. Ask others. You know, this community, for example, is a wealth of information. If I don't know something, I just post in the Slack channel and I get like 20 answers, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much. So I just think that being aware of where you're purchasing and what you're purchasing is, you know, it's good to know where things are coming from. So Kelly just checked the Kromsky website, and it appears that the Sonata only does Scotch tension. So thank you for clarifying that, Kelly. The Kromsky bobbins can do, like, they do both. So they're interchangeable. So if you have a Kromsky Minstrel and you have a Kromsky Sonata and you've got one set up in double drive and one set up in Scotch tension, you can interchange your bobbins. So that's probably why she was able to do that on her blog post and flip the bobbin around, is because she can use the smaller whorl at the back of the bobbin, which is kind of interesting. I'd never thought to do that. So I learned something as well. All right, let's move on to all the projects that I have going, because I do have quite a bit that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about socks, these two yarns here. I wanted to talk about a yarn that I'm working on currently. And I'll talk about my Sparkle Cardigan a little bit. And I would like to talk about this swatch that I knit up over the past week. Oh, I'm sorry you're disappointed now, Kelly. That's too bad. Quick Google search mentions mollusking but not much else. The mollusking has been outlawed in certain countries. So like I know New Zealand has outlawed mollusking. It's where they cut the hindquarters, the skin at the hindquarters of the extra fine sheep, usually merino, and they stretch the skin across. It's usually done without any anesthetic. It's just done on the farms. There's a high incidence of infection. I'm sure there's other side effects as well. It has been outlawed in, I'm pretty sure it's against the law in Australia too. And I remember reading something about New Zealand has finally passed laws about it. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at the fine wools. There is... All right. Let's move on because I've got all of these projects to talk about. I'm going to talk about something really quickly that is actually a selfish spin. It is not anything for the show, like for content or anything. It's not for the Patreon. It's not for any other reason except that I just really wanted to spin something selfish. So I took from Deep Stash, I took this fiber out, and this is October 2016. Yeah. Fiber Club from Nest Fiber Art Studio. And it's got all these cool fun colors in it. And this was December, so it was meant to be a Christmas colorway. And it's just really, really pretty. Let's be honest. Teal, because it's not really green. It's definitely a teal color with this really pretty cranberry red. And there's some brown in there and some white undyed, so there's some space dyeing going on. Deep Stash would be a great band name. That's so true, Becky. It's just really pretty. It was 4 ounces, so just over 100 grams. And I have been eyeing this for a while. When I was going through my stash to try to find some fiber that, or remember, this is what it was. Remember I was looking for all of the superwash fiber? Remember I was going through my stash and I was trying to find everything that I owned that was superwash? This was one of the fibers that I pulled out. And the reason why I didn't make it into the sock bin, quote unquote, is because it's superwash merino, and silk. So it is superwash, but it has merino and silk in there, and I just couldn't bring myself to throw it into the sock bin. So it ended up not going in the sock bin. This colorway was called Noel, which I just, it's so pretty. I love Christmas. I am already totally and completely sick of Christmas this year because they started Christmas back, oh, sorry for the crinkling. They started Christmas back the day after Halloween, and I am so sick of it already. Starbucks brought out their Christmas mugs. Everybody started like putting up their lights. People were putting up their Christmas trees. We hadn't even had Remembrance Day here in Canada, which there was a huge blowback in the media about that because the veterans in Canada, so we have Remembrance Day on November 11th, which is D-Day, and there was a big blowback against it because people were like, we have to at least get through Remembrance Day because it's really important to honor and remember Remembrance Day and do all of that. And more and more what's happening is Remembrance Day kind of gets lost in this 2-month Christmas thing, and I'm sick of it. So hashtag tell us how you really feel. So and like the radio station, there's a radio station up here that's Christmas songs, and it starts the day after American Thanksgiving or something, and it's a lot of Christmas. But it got me thinking because I used to do, before the podcast like really took off and the Patreon took off and I got really super involved with you guys like as a community and chatting on Slack and doing all the spin-alongs that we do and all the projects that we do together. Before that, I used to do a Advent knit or an Advent spin, and it was always spin the yarn and then knit the shawl. So the very first one that I did was commercial yarn, and then after that every year it was a hand spun shawl, and I would spin the yarn sometime in the fall and then I would knit the shawl over Advent. And then I didn't do one last year and I didn't feel particularly inspired, and I tried to cast it on a couple times and it just wasn't working, and now it'll be 2 years since I did one. And I was really missing that. So I decided, I kept coming back to this and I was sort of like, oh, I don't know if I want to start another spin right now because I need to tell you guys about this monster spin that I've been working on. And then I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do an Advent spin this year. So I may not get the shawl knit. Maybe that'll be my Advent project next year, but this is going to be my Advent spin. So this is, I've divided it all up into all these little nests. I've already spun one nest because I needed it for my control card. And I've just been spinning them end to end, and it's going to be a traditional 3-ply. So this is the first bump of the braid. I'm not worried about color management. I'm not worrying about the order. I'm not going to chain ply this to keep the green and the red together. It's not really green. It's more like a teal. It's a really beautiful sort of bluey seafoam kind of color, a little bit deeper than Tiffany blue. And I'm just going to hopefully finish this up in December. I would like to cast something on and to knit the actual shawl. I'm thinking that I might do something with white. I have a bunch of white in my stash that I spun eons ago. It's actually hanging up on the back of the door. Some Coriadel that I combed eons ago. And I'm just going to spin this up into a traditional 3-ply. I'm spinning it quite fine. And I have it on my kitchen counter, so I'm doing it on my Ashford E-spinner. I have the Ashford E-spinner 3, and I'm just going to use it as like a meditative Advent type spin. So I'm getting really behind on the chat. You guys are very chatty today. November holidays should have their time. Christmas takes over just because of economics, and I hate it. Totally. It's totally economics. Katrina and I were ranting and raving about that yesterday because we got together and had coffee. Not yesterday, sorry, on Monday. And we were sort of ranting and raving about the consumerism of this time of year. I have blogged about my Advent projects before. I blogged about them pretty much every December over the last few years until last year. So I will link them below in the show notes so that you guys can catch up on those and have a look at those shawls because they're getting to be quite old now. I'm just making a note because otherwise I'll forget. Because they were really enjoyable, and I really found that time really meditative because this is such a crazy time of year. I looked at our calendar and we've got something on pretty much every day, and I don't mind because it's such an awesome time of year once December 1st hits. There's a certain energy in the air and a little bit, and then you have January and February to kind of recover and have some quiet, hunker down, hibernate. But I really look forward to having something that I can just turn to and work on and kind of zone out for a few minutes over the next couple weeks because it's going to be crazy. How did you guys get talking about clarinets and piano? You guys are so funny. Oh, you were talking about websites for spinning bands. Okay, that's hilarious. I play piano as well, which is so funny. Eventually, what I would like to do is have the music all for like the vlogs that get released every month, the music in the show that I use halfway through. I use it under the free archives, copyrights and everything. But eventually, I would really like that music to be me playing. I came back to piano about 2 years ago, and I played all through childhood and up into my teens and stuff, but I quit when I got to Royal Conservatory level 7. So I feel like it's just not in my hands anymore. I'm having to kind of relearn everything, but I'm going to get there eventually. Probably next year, the music will be recorded and played by me. Okay, let's talk about socks, shall we? You guys love talking about socks. I had my opposing 3-ply that I did, and I had my 4-ply that I did. So I worked on this one first, got it done, and then I worked on this one, and I got this done back in November. And I loved making these yarns so much. They were so much fun, working on different yarn constructions, kind of putting color management aside and not worrying about it and giving myself a bit of a break in terms of, well, if the color's muddy, who cares, because that wasn't the point, and giving myself that chance to just play with yarn construction. And this is the third one, so I'll talk about this project really quickly as well. This is the third project that I'm working on that is a third different yarn construction of sock yarn. So this is going to be a 4-ply sock yarn as well. So this is a 3-ply. This is my opposing 3-ply. This is my 4-ply, and then this is going to be another 4-ply. And aren't these bobbins so cool? So these are Majacraft bobbins. One of the women at Guild, she sold her Majacraft rose and her Majacraft little gem, and because she bought an aura and the bobbins don't fit. So my friend Diana bought the rose, which just totally fits her because one of her daughters is, that's her name. And one of the other ladies at Guild, she bought the little gem, and she was selling these bobbins. I contacted her immediately. I'm like, can I have those bobbins? Because bobbins for any wheel, it doesn't matter what brand you're talking about, are really expensive. And she sold 3 of these crazy pink bobbins. I mean, they're not exactly my color, but they're really fun, for $45 Canadian, which is really awesome because I've been really needing bobbins, and I had to give my friend Kim her bobbins back because they're back now. They're not traveling anymore because they were away for a year, and I was able to borrow some of her bobbins from her Susie, her Majacraft Susie, but then I needed to give her bobbins back. So long story short, I have these really cool bobbins now. So I had made this opposing 3-ply, and then I had made this 4-ply, and the 4-ply is probably one of I'm probably the most proud of this yarn that I have ever been. This is probably one of my creme de la creme kind of yarns. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm just really, really proud of how it turned out. And it really got me thinking because, of course, the whole idea of doing these different yarns, these different constructions, was to figure out some of these yarns that are touted as being really great sock yarns. So I decided to take some yarn that my friend Kelsey had been working on, and I had spun these singles from some hedgehog fibers, 25 grams of hedgehog fibers, 125 grams of hedgehog fibers that I had in my stash. And I had already started spinning the singles, and then my friend Kelsey showed me at Guild, and me and my friend Diana had been sort of talking separately about doing a spin along through this book, the Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs, of some of the different yarns that are in here and trying them out. And because my slant right now and my focus right now has really been on socks, I decided to give this yarn a try. And Kelsey and Diana had been talking about this Hauser yarn, and I really wanted to give it a try. So I spun my magnum opus. That's totally what this is. My spinium opus. You guys are hilarious. So the Hauser yarn is really interesting because I spun the singles to my Ashford e-spinner. So I did 2 bobbins of singles, which was not smart because you need 4 different singles. And I spun them Z-twist. And then I didn't know what to do because I needed 2 2-ply yarns to continue on with making the Hauser yarn. So the way that you make the Hauser yarn is you spin 4 singles Z-twist, so clockwise. This is going to be opposite for you guys because you're watching me. And then you ply 2 of them. So you make 2 2-ply yarns, but you ply them Z-twist as well. So they're plied clockwise as well. So you're trying to lay. Let's see if I can show you how terrible the bobbin looks because of doing this. Look at how badly that bobbin. It looks like the yarn is unplied, which is exactly what happens because you're plying it the same direction that it was plied. So in the book, she says they're up plied Z. So the singles, Z spun singles, up plied Z. So of course they look terrible because they don't twist together. There's nothing to counter the twist. You're literally twisting them in the same direction. So the yarn looks terrible. But then you take those up plied 2-plies and you ply them together S-twist. So counterclockwise. And that's what makes the Hauser yarn. It's based on some rope that was made, and there are still ropes out there that are Hauser yarns that are made like this. And this is sort of, ooh, now I'm wrecking things. This is what the Hauser yarn looks like when it's plied. So really interesting, lots of active twist in there, and that's what it looks like when it's knit up. So very interesting yarn. It's supposed to be incredibly strong, and I'm just really curious to see what it's going to act like. I'm really curious to see what it's going to look like in socks because it's going to be really textural, And you would think that the opposing 3-ply would end up being a really textured yarn knit up, but it wasn't as textured as I thought it would be. I tried to find where in the Ravelry group somebody had written this, and I'm really sorry that I could not find it, but somebody had said that knitting with opposing 3-ply yarn is kind of like knitting with core spun, because the over twisted single of the opposing ply ends up kind of nestling itself into the middle and acting like a core around the other two singles, which is really interesting, because when I read that I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting way of describing it. And I hadn't started knitting yet. As soon as I started knitting, I was like, yep, that's exactly what this is like. The other thing, and this was a conversation that I had with my friend Kim, and she said to me that she's really excited to see what ends up happening with my socks and how I end up wearing my socks, because in her experience, and I have to admit, when I look at my commercial socks, this is definitely what happens. Nylon abrades away and works away at the natural fibers that it's put next to. And she was wondering if that's what will happen with this opposing ply in here. If this more tightly spun ply will over time abrade and work away at those other singles and at those other fibers that it's sitting next to, even though there's no nylon. So it's very, very interesting, because I wonder if that third ply, that third single that was supposed to give the yarn that added strength, if it really will, and if the entire yarn will wear really well, or if it'll just be that particular single will wear. Whereas with these ones, I think there will be much more even wear over the 4 singles, because they're all nestled in together. And of course with 4-ply yarns, just like 3-ply yarns, so much of the surface area is protected by the fibers twisting around one another. Like there just isn't as much of the actual single exposed to the outside world, if you will. Whereas like with 2-ply, there's more surface area, and of course with singles, it's completely exposed. So let me show you the finished socks. So this is in progress. I have the other one on my wheel. It's almost finished. The way that I ended up dealing with the fact that I had 2 bobbins of singles and not 4 bobbins of singles, which is one of the reasons why pre-planning is a good idea, I had to wind 2 plying balls. And because I had 125 grams of fiber, I wound 2 plying balls that were roughly 67 grams, because I have a rock inside here to wrap the singles around, and that was 4 grams. So each plying ball is roughly 62.5, 63 grams. And then I was plying, and then I'm doing my Z twist up plying, as she calls it in the book. This book is by Sarah Anderson. For those who aren't familiar with it, I highly recommend it as you make your way along your spinning journey. Maybe you can get it as a Christmas present. Maybe you feel like treating yourself. Try and find it secondhand, maybe in a local library, your local guild. It's just a great book if you can get your hands on it, and you know, learn some new yarn construction more than anything. I really love the idea of doing a spin along through this book. My friend Diana had approached me about doing a whole bunch of different sample spins out of it. I love that idea. Her and I haven't had a chance to talk about it since we initially talked about it. But of course, we're committed to our 51 yarns spin along starting in January. So after we're done that, maybe we can readdress this book. Eve is wondering what gives it its strength. Are you wondering about what gives the Hauser yarn its strength, Eve? Because I have a couple of ideas. I'm just catching up on chat. Chat is very busy today. I love that they're still talking about spinning bands, like hand spinning bands. They're so funny. Chat is very hilarious. Do you need a higher uptake when applying? I found that I did. I needed a higher uptake, and I actually put my ratio up as high as I possibly could just to like get the twist in there, because it's so difficult to ply. I will put some photos up on Instagram later today, and you guys who are here in the live chat, you'll know what the photos are for, of the samples. I did plyback tests while I was applying. I did plyback samples just to see what the cabled yarn would look like. It's really gorgeous. And I'll post a couple of photos on Instagram later today so you guys can see what it looks like when it's actually plied back on itself. It does turn into what looks like a cabled yarn. It's just not as pretty, if that makes sense, because you've up-plied, and so you've got these like twisty curly Q kind of sort of 2-plies that aren't really true 2-plies, and now because they're up-plied rather than being plied properly. So it's gonna be a very interesting yarn. I wonder if the opposing ply acting like a core gives the yarn its strength. Yes, that's exactly what is supposed to give it strength. The interesting thing, so let's talk about the actual socks. Is there a list of Instagram names for members of the group? Would love to follow some of you. Oh, that's a good idea, Becky. We could do that over, how could we do that? You know what we could do on the Ravelry group? This is what we should do. On the Ravelry group, why don't we start a thread of people's Instagram accounts, and like if you host a podcast on YouTube, if you're on any other social media, and you can put your usernames in there and people can go and find you if you don't mind sharing, and if you don't mind people coming and searching for you. Let's do that, because I often find it really difficult to connect who is who, especially if you're on the Slack channel and you use a different handle than you do on Instagram or on Ravelry. It gets really confusing, like who's who and who fits where. So I will start that later today. All right, so here are my opposing ply socks, and here are my 4-ply socks. So let's talk about the opposing ply first. The fabric of the opposing ply is really interesting. It's a little bit firmer, a little bit sturdier. I knit this on 2.25 millimeter needles, and when you touch the fabric, they look like traditional 3-ply socks from a distance, if you knew they were 3-ply. But, you know, they're hand spun, hand knit socks, they're probably 3-ply. But when you look at them really closely, there is a big difference in the fabric, and it's almost as if that opposing ply acts as like a piece of thread running through the whole sock. So you know when you hold a thread with your yarn as you're knitting, it's very similar to that. And when you run your hand over it, it has a certain, I don't want to say coarseness because it's not coarse. It has a certain surface texture that doesn't exist in any of my other socks, even my 4-plies. It just has a certain texture on the surface that feels different. And until you feel it yourself, make this yarn and knit up some socks, because it feels very interesting. And I do wonder if it'll help them to wear longer. I don't know. I'm really torn. So those are the socks. They knit up beautifully. I absolutely love these. I'm going to have a really hard time wearing these because I love them so much. Now these socks. I love these socks. They are so smooth and round and plump, and I probably could have gone down to 1.75 millimeter needles. These were knit on 2 millimeter needles. Sorry, I said these were knit on 2.25s, but they were knit on 2 millimeter needles. I'm going to use a bad word. My stupid knitting gauge is getting looser and looser and looser. And the reason why I'm frustrated is because when I went from 2.5 millimeter needles down to 2.25 millimeter needles for knitting socks, I just was like, oh my goodness, this is too small. They're going to take me forever. And now I have to go down to 2 millimeters or even 1.75 millimeters. And I had a big, I don't know what the right word is, rant at my friend Mari about it, because I'm just so frustrated because she's in the exact same boat. And I could have downsized these as well. Like they could have been knit even finer on 1.75s. 4-ply yarn on 1.75 millimeter needles. Like, come on. It just doesn't even seem fair. Yeah. So this could have been knit even a little bit more tightly, and it's still, you know, it's pretty tight, but again, they could have been even tighter. So if they don't wear very well, it's probably because I needed to downsize the needles. But the fabric is just gorgeous. It's so interesting. And isn't it funny? 4 plies and they still stripe. These socks still have a slight stripe to them. When I ripped the fiber apart and I made all those little nests, I spun them from the same end every time. So I made sure that I was spinning, like if I started with the green, I always started with the green for that entire bobbin. And I think that's what contributed to the striping, because for the most part, I kept the colorway relatively intact, which is pretty cool. 4-ply socks. And you can actually see the colorway. There's some places in these socks where the 4 colors actually matched up, which is pretty cool. So here's what they look like from a distance, just so you can get a sense of the striping. So I kind of agree with you, Eve, about needing to spin thicker. The thing is with 4-plies is I wasn't really sure how once the 4 singles came together, like exactly what the finished gauge of the yarn would be. And so I probably could have spun a little tiny bit thicker, but I wasn't really sure. So lesson learned for sure. Although I do really love the socks and I love the finishing. I use the Fish Lips Kiss Heel as always. I haven't really started to switch that up at all yet. There are other heels that I would like to knit. I just haven't kind of gone there because of knitting all of these samples for the show and for showing you guys and for the content. So that is those. Okay, let me catch up with chat because again, core-spun socks, that would be interesting. I don't think true core-spun socks, this is just my personal opinion, I don't think that they would last because I think what would happen is unless you really, really, really tightly core spun on the fiber on top of the core, I think what would really happen is, like with these I'm not totally sure, but with real core spun socks I think you really would have the fiber that's wrapped around. I think it really would come apart over time. That's just my gut reaction and my gut feeling. Again, if somebody's willing to try it and willing to do it, I would love to see the results. I'm just catching up with chat. You guys are really amazing. 4-ply only barely increases beyond the thickness of a 3-ply of same singles. After a while, it is seriously diminishing returns on time spent spinning singles. So true, Becca. So as you add more singles, it's not like the yarn gets massively thicker because the singles are all wrapping around one another. Like even if you look at this yarn at my finished 4-ply, it's not like it's those singles take space, right? So it's not like the actual, you know, it's not like the yarn is that much thicker because you still need space for all of those singles to twist together. And because I spun them really finely, it came out to roughly the same gauge as what a 3-ply would have. So that's a really good point. What wraps prints did you spin your singles? I actually don't know. They were so fine that I just didn't bother figuring it out. I do have a spinner's control card. I could figure it out. But they were finer than 64 wraps Princh. And at that point I was like, as long as they're consistent, I'm not going to worry about it. And I can't remember what my my 2-ply plyback was. Oh, I didn't write it down. Shoot. Because this was my control card for this yarn. So those are my singles. This was my 2-ply, and then this was the 4-ply sample. So that is how I wrote it up and how I kept it all organized. And then for my Hedgehog Fibres one that I'm doing right now, the one that's going to be the Hauser yarn, the 2-ply plyback test looks like this. It's this yarn here. And then that was one of my other 2-ply plyback tests. This was a 4-ply plyback test, this black one in the middle here. That was a 4-ply plyback test that I did off of my wheel. And then this bottom one is a 4-ply cabled plyback test at the bottom there. So that's roughly what the yarn will look like when it's done. It just won't be as clean and as pretty of a cable yarn as this is, because this is like a real cable yarn. So interesting. I have my whole book here. So we were talking on the Slack channel a while ago about how we keep track of all of our yarn samples, and I used to keep all my stuff in a box, and I was finding it really, really difficult to find things and to keep all of my stuff organized. So I actually put it in a binder, and I got this idea from my friend Becca. I used all of these photos photo journal pages, I guess they're called. And I organized them all that way. And then I have a few business card inserts so that if I have people's business cards, I can throw them in. So like Tina's at Elf and Wool. I have a couple of Katrina's that I've thrown, one of them I've thrown in to keep, so that I kind of have a record of some of the dyers and some of the places that I've gotten fiber from over time. And also if I'm trying to figure out websites or find people again, if there's somebody like my friend Lori of Disdero Ranch, if I'm trying to tell somebody else about her, then I can just give them one of her business cards and they're right there and I know exactly where they are. Kind of like a Rolodex, but in a binder. All right, we are getting on for time like we always do because there's always so much to talk about. So I wanted to talk really quickly about a yarn sample that I knit up over this past weekend. I did it at work. I spun up this llama and silk. If you guys have been around over the course of this fall, you remember this yarn. I spun it up. It was 530 grams of llama and silk. I had a bit of a mishap when I went to finish it, but c'est la vie. And let's get the camera to focus here. And I knit up a swatch. So this is what the swatch looks like. I don't love it. It's very heavy and it's quite dense. And I knit this on 5.5 millimeter needles, 5 millimeter needles. I have it written down in my one of my journals. And yeah, it's just made a really, really dense yarn. It's quite fuzzy. And the yarn knits up to basically a worsted weight because of the density of it. I went with a really loose stockinette stitch because mostly because otherwise the yarn is going to be so heavy and it's going to make such a heavy garment. And I didn't love the swatch. The more I upsized the needles, the worse the fabric was, but the more I downsized the needles, the nicer the fabric was, and the denser, of course, and the heavier the swatch got. And so I ended up settling on this, which is about, I think it's 5.5 millimeter needles. Anyways, in the end, I decided I have enough yarn, and Katrina has my loom right now, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to weave this. I'm going to weave it up into a really loose set throw blanket and see how that ends up, because I think it's got that lovely drape and the sheen, and it would just be really pretty, and just make a really loose set blanket and see where I can end up. Make quite, maximize my yardage as much as I can. And I think it would be really pretty. So that's what I'm going to do with this. I'm just waiting for my loom to come back from Katrina, because she's working on some fabric for her eldest daughter. She wants to make a hand woven bag or a hand woven purse. I'm not totally sure. So Katrina's been weaving some fabric for her, and that is what this is going to become. I really want to see, I want to do something with it. Like, otherwise it's just going to sit in my stash, and it's such gorgeous yarn. Yes, be careful when finishing the blanket. Yes. After my last experience. A vest. Yeah, I don't really wear vests. That's the problem. I have knit quite a few vests out of my hand spun, and I don't wear them. So I was thinking just a really loose blanket throw. Our furniture in our living room is dark brown, and our armchair is a light, it's a very light color of this. So it would actually look really nice in our living room. It would go really well with the aesthetic. And I thought that it would just be something that you could throw over your legs. Because our house does get quite cold because we keep our furnace turned off most of the time. So last thing, and then we're going to say goodbye. This is just a really quick reflection on my Sparkle cardigan. So I am wearing it. You guys can see. You guys were very kind at the beginning of the show and gave me some compliments on it. Thank you so much. It fits me perfectly. I've worn it quite a few times, which I feel like is a really good indication as to whether a project has gone well or not, is if you wear it or not. And I am just really happy with how the whole project worked out. Yes, I need your help with this. Becca said you mentioned needing her help with that, with something with this, but I think talking it through with you guys, I think I've decided on doing the blanket. I'll let you know if I wimp out and then I'll have to go to plan B. But I think just talking it out with you guys and sitting here and just reflecting on some of the things I didn't like about this swatch, I am pretty sure that I'm going to go with a blanket. Although now that I'm playing with it, it's not too bad, but I don't know. I don't want a shawl because it's way too heavy for that. Eve, I will talk about the book in just a sec. Let me just finish about the Sparkle Cardigan. So this was my initial swatch. I had some other swatches that I had done up for this sweater, but I actually ended up ripping them out. And this was the swatch that I ended up going with. So the original fabric and this swatch was knit on 3.75 millimeter needles. So the whole sweater is actually the whole body and everything is all knit on 3.75 millimeter needles. So the whole back of it, everything is all knit on 3.75s. Where I ran into trouble was when I got to the sleeves. So the construction of this cardigan is actually really interesting, and I'll just put my hair over my shoulder so you guys can see, and let me turn a little bit. So you actually start at the back up here. I haven't really talked about the construction of this cardigan particularly, but you cast on at across the back and you knit the back of the cardigan, and then when you get to the bottom of the armholes here, you go back and pick up and knit down the fronts. Once you get to the bottom, you attach all three and you work the rest of the way down the cardigan. And I actually lengthened the cardigan by about 4 inches. So the body of my cardigan is roughly 17 inches, I think, in total. It's quite long in comparison to the pattern, because I think the body of the cardigan in the pattern is only like 14 inches or something. I had more than enough yarn, so I wasn't concerned. So I have a ton of yarn left over. I figure I probably have 600 or 700 yards left. There's more. I have all this yarn left. Tons and tons. So I'm actually trying to decide what I'm going to do, because I have way more yarn left over than I thought that I would. Part of the reason why I chose this pattern is because of the knitting gauge was really fine. And I had so much yardage. I had like 1,400 yards of yarn. And I think the pattern called for like 1,200 yards or something like that. I maybe used 700, maybe. I don't know why I used so much less, because my gauge was bang on. I lengthened it. I did knit slightly shorter sleeves, but I mean, not by much. I sewed on the button band. So instead of doing a pick up and knit button band, I knit a 1x1 rib. I knit until I roughly had a button band that was the length of the circumference of the outside of the cardigan. And then I seamed it on and finished the last couple of rows at the bottom on the one side once I had the rest of it all sewn on. I've done that before on other cardigans, and I just really love the aesthetic of it. I think it finishes the cardigan in a very professional way. It gives it a lot of structure on the outside edge, and it doesn't create a big band here. I just really like it, and I like what it does, because it's basically a double knitting, because it's knit one, purl one, and so I just like the fabric that it gives. The other thing that I did was when I got to so I had no problems knitting the body of the cardigan. Everything went off without a hitch. The only modification I made was lengthening it and then doing the seamed button band and attaching it. I ran into problems when my gauge changed. So I had knit the whole thing on 3.75 millimeter needles, and then I had done the button band on 3.5 millimeter needles for just a tighter, cleaner knit. And then when I went to knit the sleeves, I knit the sleeves on 3.75 millimeter needles, just like the body of the cardigan. And I got to the end of the sleeves and realized that they were so massive. And I talked about that on the show a little while ago. So I won't go into all of that again, but I did rip them out. And then I wasn't really sure what to do, because I felt like if I knit them again on 3.75 millimeter needles, even knitting a smaller size, I would probably still end up with a much looser fabric than I did on the body of the cardigan. So I went down to 3.5 millimeter needles, and I kind of just said a prayer, because I didn't do another gauge swatch. I probably should have, but I just was like, well, at this point, I have to do something to get a tighter fabric. I probably don't need to go down to 3.25 millimeter needles, but I need to go down. So in the end, I went down to 3.5 millimeter needles, and the sleeves fit really well. They fit close for sure, but they do fit really well. There is some ease in there. They're not super, super tight, and you can see there's lots of ease under here, and they fit nicely around the arm sky. I probably, if I could do this again, I would probably actually knit the sleeves. I'll just turn so you guys can really see. I would probably knit this part a little bit looser and pick up a few more stitches just to fit my sleeve cap really super well, because as it is, they pull down a little bit. And I've talked about fitting issues on other shows around sleeves and sleeve caps, and picked up sleeves that are worked in short rows versus a sleeve that's set in, that's seamed. My friend Chrissy over at Snappy Stitch's previous episodes, she's talked about that extensively, because these types of sweaters don't necessarily fit the average person like myself, like her. The sleeve cap tends to be a little bit small, and there isn't enough fabric that goes across the shoulder cap itself, so the physical, like the body, that they end up being a bit tight, and they pull the sweater down. That's definitely the case with this one, but I have found that in wearing it, it's stretched quite a bit already, and the sleeve cap, like this here, has already stretched quite a bit, that I'm kind of glad I don't have a ton of fabric in there, because I think it would just get too big over time. The other thing is, because which way do I turn? I have to do everything opposite because of the camera. Because of everything in here, let me just turn the cameras around. Because of everything in here is worked along here, and there isn't really any like short rows as there normally would be in most cardigans, where you work short rows back here to lift up the back of the cardigan, up the back of the neck. I often feel like this shoulder seam isn't quite high enough, so I'm always pulling on it, because I almost feel like the sleeve should be more like here. That's just me. I suspect that's just the fit of the cardigan, and it's just getting used to it. However, I have worn it 4 times now since I finished it and blocked it and got it all done, took photos of it, did all that stuff, and it's really comfortable. It's probably one of the only, other than my Solaris cardigan, which I wear all the time, which I'll show you guys a photo of really quick, because it's definitely like one of my favorite knits of all time, and I've actually thought about knitting it again, and I haven't. I'd really like to do this cardigan out of my hand spun, and I just don't have anything in my stash that is suitable right now. So other than probably that cardigan, this is probably the only other one that I've ever made that doesn't shift a ton, and where I'm not constantly like pulling at it, and where I'm not constantly trying to adjust it. And I've even worn it with a shawl over top so that it's sort of layered. Ravelry's taking forever to load. And I didn't have to pull at it and tug at it and do a bunch of stuff with it, which felt really good. Like, to knit a cardigan from start to finish, this much time and effort, and I don't have to tug at it and pull at it particularly and worry about fit issues. The other cardigan that I don't have to pull and tug at when I'm wearing is my Acer cardigan, and also my Willamette cardigan. It's more like a jacket, that one. Those are probably the only other ones. So this one that I'm going to show you now is probably my most worn and favorite cardigan. It was by the Barocco design team. This is me wearing it. Wearing it there. Yeah, so just that cardigan I don't have to pull at and shift and muddle around in. This one I don't have to. It's a really nice feeling. I feel like that is a testament to a really well-made cardigan, and a cardigan that's designed to fit. The only other thing, no, I'm probably not going to dye this, although I probably will. Whatever I do with this yarn, I probably will dye, just so that I can have like the contrast of the two projects, one dyed, one undyed. And the only reason why I'm not going to dye it is because of the buttons. because of the buttons that I chose to go on it. I just really like them. They're that beautiful little sort of hits of color there. I can wear them with anything, and the cream, it just means I can wear it with so many things. So I did sew in a tag. These are my tags that I had made. Hand wash, lay flat to dry, and I sewed it in at the upper back. I was worried that it wouldn't lay down properly, but it's actually laid down really, really perfectly. And these are the tags that I bought from Sweet Pine Hills. I've talked about them on the show before. I custom made them. Sweet Pine Hills, they're on Etsy as Sweet Pine Hills. You custom make them, and they come like this. I've been trying to sew them on as many of my items as I can and my garments and stuff, but it's hard to, sometimes I just don't remember. They say by Rachel, and then they say wellforpearls.com, hand wash, lay flat to dry. And the idea is that you fold them in half and wrap them around some sort of a garment. So like on a toque brim, you put them like that. I did Nora a pair of hand spun hand knit mittens over the course of the break between last show and this show. They took me a day to do. I whipped them off super, super quick, and she's put them somewhere. She's hidden them. And so I wanted to show them to you today, but like I said, she's put them somewhere and she's hidden them. So I don't know where they are. And I will show you those next time, because hopefully I will find them and I can share those with you next time, because I just used the Simple Mitt pattern by Tin Can Knits, and they really turned out super, super cute. I can show you a picture. And then, oh, Becca, you meant my leftovers. Am I going to dye the leftovers? Yes, I am. I am going to do that sometime this winter, I think, maybe on Christmas break. The kids, if I mix up the natural dyes ahead of time, then the kids can help me. And James loves doing that kind of stuff. So these are the mitts that I made for Nora as a bit of a teaser for next time, and I will show them to you when I find them. She's hidden them somewhere. So I whipped those up since last show. And they're just really cute. I made an extra long cuff, and those were out of some hand spun that I had in my stash that I had actually spun up for club. Sweet Georgia Yarn Superwash Merino. It was a November 2017 colorway called Wobble. And I'll talk about those more next time. That's the yarn. It was blues and purples and pinks, a little bit of white. Not at all my colors, but totally a 4-year-old girl. So it was perfect, because Nora loves all those colors, even though she wears a lot of different colors and loves wearing yellows and greens and stuff. So, all right, update about the book. So basically the book is still being worked on. Katrina and I, we've done all the writing for it. All the photography is done for it. We're in the midst of layout. It's just been a process. There's been a lot of other stuff going on in both of our families, and we would keep getting waylaid by stuff, but it is being worked on. It's just that now we're at the layout part, and this is the time-consuming part. So that is where we're at. I think that's everything for today. I'm going to say goodbye because we are well over an hour, and I really, really appreciate your time. I don't know how many books we are actually going to be physically printing. I suspect we'll be doing quite a large run. I don't know if it'll be the only run of like the actual physical copy. Of course, it'll be available as an ebook as well. So that's something that we're working on. But I know that many people in our Patreon community would like a hard copy of it. So we are keeping you guys in mind and looking at the numbers and everything. So please don't worry. I think there will be enough for everybody. In fact, I know there will be enough for everybody. So that is it. I don't know about pre-orders. That is our plan, is to have pre-orders, but we want it to go to the printer before we do pre-orders. So we will keep you guys posted. All right, until next time, happy spinning. Have a wonderful couple weeks. I will talk to you in December. Our next live stream will be on, since you guys are right here, I may as well tell you, December 12th. So I will see you then. Have a wonderful couple weeks. Happy Hanukkah for those who are celebrating Hanukkah, and I hope for those who are entering Advent that it is a peaceful and prayerful time. And to everybody else, happy holidays, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!